Hi there. We are going to talk about learning targets in this section. And I wanted to just kind of refresh our understanding of why learning targets are so important. And it really goes back to those universal design for learning principles. And if you're not using learning targets regularly, consistently, you're really missing an opportunity to help students learn more and more effectively, more efficiently in your classroom. And so I always, in my mind, I always think about, well, gosh, if the only thing I have to do, is put a learning target up to help them learn better, to help them feel more confident in what they're doing, then why wouldn't I do that? And so I wanted to kind of walk you through why it does help kids, and also how I go about creating a learning target for the workshop, because it's not something that Lucy Calkins includes in her work, but I know through the research that I've read and from all different resources that it's key to really helping those most marginalized learners doing what they need. We want to do what may be essential for some and useful for all. And so a learning target is essential for some, but it is useful for all. And so why learning targets? And so learning targets really help a student to focus in on what the day's learning is going to be. They also create a gap for the students. And when our brain has a gap that's been created for us about what we say we can do and that thing, especially if we can't do it yet, it's called cognitive dissonance. When we have that gap, our brain automatically starts to work to try to reconcile that statement. So if I have an I can statement that says I can do something, my brain is going to start to figure out and create ways for that to happen. And so it speaks to the engagement and motivation that we want our students to have. It actually, we talk about kids having inherent motivation and engagement. That's what we can do. We can help to set that in motion with a learning target. So it helps students to have that. It also during the class period, and this is why it's important to have it posted. And I don't always have it, since I'm going into different classrooms, I don't always have it posted. What I would suggest you do is that first period class or your the class before all the other classes, advisory, have a student who likes to write on the board and have them write your learning target up there every day. Or you can have kids take turns. I never wrote my own learning target in my classroom. My students always volunteered to do that. So that is something that you can do, because what happens with a learning target is it also helps students to self-regulate. They can look at what they're supposed to do and see where they are in relation to that objective. And again, if we're not doing that, we're really missing out on an opportunity to help them learn better, to understand more, to stay focused during the lesson. So learning targets to activate engagement and motivation have to have two parts. It can't just be an I can statement with whatever you want them to be able to do. It has to be, and I wrote it down here at the bottom. I'm going to hide that. It has to have two distinct parts. You want to have an I can statement with the skill or understanding the student should be able to say or do by the end of the class period. It is in that day's chunk of time. Now you might say, well, Holly, what if I have a lesson that goes over 2 days? That's fine, but you still need to have a learning target that happens within the chunk of time. And then you'd have another learning target after that about what they're going to do in that period. So, and if you have questions about that, I've been really practicing with learning targets for years and can help give you some ideas. So today this week, I'm going to be teaching a lesson from the writing unit and narrative writing unit. And Lucy Calkins in her work always provides a teaching point. So her teaching point for this next class that we're going to teach is today I want to teach you that writers also rehearse for writing by trying out several different leads. So the teaching point really isn't a learning target. There isn't an I can statement, but it does have some things that I want to make sure that it is in our learning target. For example, I need my students to understand that writers rehearse for writing by trying out several different leads. And in fact, when I read through the rest of the lesson, that's what they're going to do during their work time. They're going to try out those several different leads. And at the end of that, they're going to share that information with their partners. And so that helps me to understand how to put my learning target together. So you can see up here, it says, I can rehearse for writing my narrative by noticing several different lead techniques in our mentor text. I looked through the lesson and I found that that's what we're going to do. And using those techniques to write several different leads for my own story. So what I've done here is I've had an I can statement with the skill that they're going to use. So they're going to notice, what part of the skill is they're going to be able to notice several different lead techniques. Okay. And then the next part is that they're going to use those techniques and they're going to write several different leads, right? And I'm going to know they got it when I see those several different leads that are using those techniques. And so that's what I would explain to them. So I like to break it down. That's a lot of writing on one page without kind of highlighting anything. And so when I present this to the students, I do read it first from this white page. And then I also highlight the different pieces and we look at those. So for example, so what I do here is I just duplicate the slide and then I'm going to go ahead and highlight the skill or understanding. So rehearse for writing my narrative by noticing several different lead techniques in our mentor text. Okay, that's how they're going to know the different techniques. And I'm going to highlight that. I got to move my head. Okay. And I'm going to highlight that. And I like to use a really soft highlighting colors because that's easier on their eyes, especially if if students are looking at modules all day. So for example, for a flex day, having those soft highlighting colors is really important and nice for them. Okay, so I've highlighted that. Then I'm going to want the slide to flip, right? I'm going to click next and I want them to see the second part. So I'm going to duplicate this slide and move it down here. And then I'm just going to highlight that other part. So in our mentor text, and using those techniques to write several different leads for my own story. And I put it in a different color, again, nice and light, so that I have that for them. So when I present it for them, I'll go back, it looks like this. I read it to them, and then I highlight the different parts, and I go over those again. So I might say, okay, guys, so it's really important today that we understand that we're going to rehearse for writing our narratives by noticing several different lead techniques. We're going to go back to that mentor text that we used. And then we're going to know that we did this, that we got this skill when we use those techniques to write several different leads for our own stories. So that's how we're going to know. That's how I'm going to know that you have done the learning for today. And so what that does is it just walks us through. It looks nice. It helps them to, again, focus what their learning is for the class period.